Courage, vision, resilience. It's more than just a journey. It's a universe of endless possibility, where a single idea can change a man's life, creating new worlds from the ground up. I am Ricky. I'm your guide through the epic stories of Web3 pioneers. Join me and enjoy the podcast. The Tales of Web3.
Yo, 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 what is up, everyone? This is Ricky. Welcome to the episode 2 of the Tales of Web3 season 2 with my friend Lucas, the founder of Media. Hi, Lucas, how are you?
I'm doing great. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. How are you?
It is awesome. It's that we've been working together for all this long and finally having you on my podcast.
Yeah, always great to see your face and be on the other side of the mic here. So yeah, I'm just super appreciative of you having me on and share the pod story and a little bit about what we're building.
Let's go. So the first question that I always ask my guest is please share about your stories of how you get into the Web3 rabbit hole and how you ended up here building pods. I know you have an interesting background from previously Bankless, right? So I'm pretty excited to hear that as well.
Yeah, so I was in and out of crypto a handful of times throughout like my college years. So came across Ethereum pretty early in like 2015. It tried to mine it. It bricked my computer within 12 hours. So I gave up. Came back another year later. Downloaded the Mist wallet. Couldn't figure out how to actually get ETH. So punted another year, and then next thing I know, ETH was ripping to $100, $200, $300 in 2017, and that's kind of when I went really down the rabbit hole of like, okay, there's got to be something here. And at that time, I was kind of finishing up school. I had joined the Colorado Blockchain Club. Was fortunate enough to meet a handful of kind of early crypto people, one of them being Cooper, but also like Kevin Owocki was kind of within the crowd, and a handful of others, Austin Griffith, who's also a big dev, and was fortunate enough to meet some of those people within the scene, the crypto scene at Boulder, Colorado. So I graduated, decided to go all in on crypto.
Yes, please go ahead.
No worries. And decided to go all in on crypto, and started with doing some, I guess, shitty ICO consulting, for lack of a better word. And then through that, this is in 2018, so a lot of ICOs were still trying to squeezing out the last bit of juice. So we were trying to help them out. Me and Koopa Troopa, who's you might know. But yeah, we had started doing that, and then we were fortunate enough to start covering DeFi in like late 2018, 2019, when Uniswap, the makers, all that kind of stuff was just starting to pop up. And through that, we had a really good front row seat at the emergence of DeFi. We were writing a lot about like 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6 articles every single week, multiple articles every day, and pretty much just covering and trying to educate everyone about the emergence of DeFi. During that time, Ryan Sean Adams, the founder of Bankless, was actually following a lot of my writing and a lot of my work, and offered me a job as the first employee at Bankless, where I was responsible for taking over the newsletter. So I took over the newsletter and was the editor for it from June 2020 up until May of 2023. And help scale that media company from, less than 10,000 subscribers at the time that I joined, to, over 400, 500,000 by the time I left.
So you're one of the early pioneers at Bankless.
Trying to. Yes, of course, Ryan and David had a lot to do with it, and I was very fortunate to kind of have a co-pilot seat on that rocket ship. But overall, it was a really great experience, kind of learning a lot, covering a lot, and kind of seeing that growth within the Bankless ecosystem. While I was there, I definitely I learned a lot, but I think I got a little frustrated or just annoyed about the media business models. In short, I think it sucks. The current model or business model that's available for creators, I think it sucks. And really, creators are left with two options. One of them to monetize is to get a sponsorship. Unfortunately, that's usually only reserved for big creators that you have, 10,000 plus people to shill whatever brand is willing to pay you. And on the other side of that, like most viewers don't really like it. It doesn't really convert that well. And as a whole, just not maybe the most efficient model. I think it can be done really well for certain brands and if you're the right creator, but sponsorships as a whole, I think at scale are not the most optimal way to monetize an audience. And then on the other side of it, you have the other option outside of sponsorships is exclusive content. The problem with exclusive content is like, yeah, you're getting direct payments from your fans, but you're really limiting or gating the growth of your content and the reach of your content. So you
100%.
can't really go
Yes.
viral on YouTube if you're only going to release it to your 100 500 subscribers that are willing to pay for you. So these two options within the media business model, I think, were just not optimal for me. And then the cherry on top is that you kind of had all of these crypto media companies at the time, and it wasn't just Bankless; it's really everyone talking all day, every day about how amazing this technology is and how it's going to affect every single industry. And no one was really looking inwards as to what does crypto do for media. And I really went down this rabbit hole in probably late 2020, early 21. And I think that there's a lot of things that you can do. There's a very large design space, but I think the most foundational thing you can do is publish all of the media on chain, make it collectible and ownable by the community. And through it, you're not only opening up this new monetization model where it's direct fan to creator payments, but you're allowing those collectors to own the work, get upside in you as a creator. And what's more interesting is that you're building this kind of real time composable social graph of your biggest fans that you can then start to interact, engage, and reward in so many different ways that weren't possible in Web 2. So all that's to say is that I really became pilled on-chain media. I begged Ryan and David for about a year to test this concept out. And we were fortunate enough to do it under this program called Bankless Collectibles, where we released about
I know
20
about that.
episodes. Yeah,
I
we
know about
released
that.
released about 20 episodes as NFTs from the Bankless archive back in, this had to be 2022 and into 2023. And it was very successful as a whole. I think the problem is that it didn't really scale. We had duct taped together a tech stack using like Sound Protocol. The NFTs were on ETH mainnet using ERC 721s, and all of it just kind of culminated in it being a little bit of a nightmare when you started getting to scale. So you tried to mint 50 of these or one a week. That's maybe on the low end for a content creator for how frequently they release content. Some of them are releasing 1 to 3 times. I know Bankless releases a new podcast about 3 times a week. So if you think about that, one, on the gas fees, people were just paying more in gas fees than they were on mint fees on ETH mainnet. And then ERC 721s, while they're great for art and music, where you're only releasing maybe once or twice a year at most as an artist, for content creators, it becomes a nightmare to manage. After 1 year, you're going to have 50, 100, 200 plus Ethereum contracts that you now have to manage. So all of that just kind of led me to think, okay, this doesn't really scale, but we can scale this. So obviously deploying natively on layer 2, eliminating the gas cost as a factor or variable in the minting was the first step. And then the second big kind of change that we made when we decided to build pods was building on an 1155. So this really streamlined all of the content to live under one single Ethereum contract rather than you having 50 plus ETH contracts. So I left Bankless in about May of 2023 to start building pods full time from the ground up to scale kind of like this program. And we ended up launching in a private beta in Q4 of 2023. Since then, we've been operating on a whitelist, onboarding about 1 to 3 podcasts every week. And since then, I think we've onboarded about 85 podcasts. There's over 1,200 episodes on the platform right now that have been minted. And through it, I think we've done about 500,000 mints across 120,000 collectors and generating, I think, well over $1 million in volume, with a lot of that going directly to creators. So it's been a pretty exciting year for us. But that is effectively my long-winded journey on how we got here today, sitting here recording a podcast for
Dude,
Tales
I
of
love it.
Web3, a podcast on pods. So
Dude, I love it. Especially I love your hot takes, right? Like the traditional media company sucks.
yeah,
Yeah, I really.
I think it's something that's like an elephant in the room. I think most people just kind of deal with it. You cut to sponsors on your favorite podcast, and it's like, okay, I'll either skip it or maybe I'll just listen to it. Maybe I do enjoy it, but that's like a really small subset of people. So there really just doesn't seem to be a really optimal business model for creators that allowed media to be free to consume, but also anyone can monetize no matter their audience size. And that's kind of really the sweet spot that I think on-chain media fills.
That's awesome. Can you dive a little bit deeper on like the growth strategies of pods? Like what are the reasons that you think contributed to it has like such a high growth rate with all these amazing content creators
Mm-hmm.
releasing pods on chain, right? And
Yeah.
like within just less than a year. Like what are some of the success factors that you think contributed the most?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think for on-chain media, the beautiful part about this is that there's really no reason not to do this at all. You can continue to run sponsorships if you want to. You can continue to release content exclusively via Substack or Patreon or anything like that. This is entirely a net new additive kind of revenue stream or like engagement model for your audience that didn't exist about 12 to 18 months ago in any scalable capacity. So I think the reason for why this has worked so well on the creator side and why we've been able to onboard almost 100 podcasts in less than a year. With that said, we also have like another wait list of 100 plus podcasts. So it's not like we're struggling on the demand side. But why this works is because there's no reason not to do it. At the end of the day, for you as a creator, you're kind of just opening up a new kind of surface area for you to monetize and engage your fans. And you have
That's
this kind
me.
of,
That's
yeah,
me.
very
I fucking loved it.
I love that. And you have a very fruitful design space on how you want to engage and reward those audience members. So, some of the stuff that we've seen that creators have done on the platform is like create a token gated chat. So if you collect one of the episodes, you can access that host directly and join that community. We've also seen other creators like Rehash set up like voting. So if you collect an NFT, that equals one vote. And you can vote on future guests or future content that's featured on Rehash. So you kind of get governance rights over the content. And then from there, I think that there's been a lot of other kind of experimentations that's been happening on the platform. But to answer again, like the question is like, there's no reason not to do this, and there's like a massive design space and upside and opportunity for the creators that are early here.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And one of the favorite part of the Tales of Web3 Season 2 is that I let my guests to share their hot takes and very controversial takes that people probably agree, people probably don't, right? And then as what you shared, quote unquote, the meme coins are going to follow the exact same path as ICOs, DeFi, NFTs, and etc. Can you please share more about that? I think the audience will be curious to know
Yeah.
what your thoughts are as well.
I think that this might not be the hottest take, but I think it's something that it's important to take a step back in, given our current, stance in the cycle of like meme coins are all the rage right now. But in reality, like this is not the first time that we have these kind of metas within crypto that kind of get a little bit ahead over its skis, in that sense, like back in 2017, ICOs were massively popular. It was, generating hundreds of or tens of billions of dollars. I don't know what the exact number is of new kind of capital formation that was happening. Everyone and their mother was launching an ICO, and then 99% of them went to zero. Same thing happened. Fast forward 2 years, DeFi kind of caught wind. Yield farming was all the rage. You had yam farm, like yams Yam Finance and like all these crazy food farms and everything that ultimately just went to zero. Same thing. Fast forward another year or two later, NFTs were going crazy. Everyone and their mother was launching an NFT collection. Now, fast forward to today, 99% of those NFTs are at zero. And I think we're kind of at that same point where, there's a lot of hype and opportunity around meme coins right now. It's not necessarily me fading it in the same way that DeFi and NFTs and now meme coins or ICOs at the time and now meme coins kind of have like there's a value that's there, but we're probably a little overextended on that. And likely, I would be pretty confident on this take that like 99% of the meme coins that exist today are not going to be around in 3 to 5 years. I don't think that that's like the craziest hot take if you've been around multiple cycles at this point. But I think it's not something that people want to kind of recognize right now. And it's not saying that the music's going to stop tomorrow. It might go on for another year, but it's definitely just not something, for me, it's very obvious that this is not something that's going to be sustainable over multi-years and multi-decades. Even though that, 1% of these NFT or meme coins are going to succeed and probably, command multi-billion-dollar market caps as Dogecoin has over the past decade. It's just like a lot of them, the long tail are gonna go to zero, and it's you don't want to get caught bag holding the 99% that go to zero. It's painful.
Yeah, I always have this thought or like negative perspective about like the meme coins, probably because I've seen the similar patterns you just talked about, right? Another 3 to 5 years, only the guys who are building actual sustainable stuff, like pods, right, is probably gonna be here. Speaking of that, where do you imagine or envision pods to be at in the position 3 to 5 years later?
I think right now we're really at this like end of the first inning of on-chain media. I think we're starting to see, a year ago, I think the concept of it was it's not going to be a thing. I think now, we have a lot more kind of data saying that we've done this 0 to 1. Like Zora's done a really good job. They're doing numbers. He just launched the Zora app. We're seeing more traction around on-chain social, which I think is like kind of like a parallel kind of vertical or like very synergistic vertical there. So I think in the past year, I've already seen this 0 to 1 happen where it used to be like, why would I put my media on chain? To now, at least a lot of creators are on board with it. And it's now, the question or the hesitancy is like, why are people like,
why not?
Stuff? Yeah. And also like, I think a lot of creators realize now it's like, why not? Why wouldn't I be doing this? And I think
100%.
eventually we'll kind of get over that line of like minting will become a consumer behavior, and it's really just a microtransaction to your favorite creator for that specific piece of content saying that you really liked it. Now, what the value of that microtransaction, right now it's $1 or $2. Is it going to go down to 10, 20 cents? Probably. And that might make it way more accessible for the average person to not think twice about, minting, even if it's just like a reskinned like with a micropayment. I think as a whole, 3 to 5 years now, I would like to see all media to be on chain, or at least like 50% of it or some material amount of it. I think
ambitious.
We have a long way to go, but again, to the earlier point, there's no reason not to do this. And it's not just for crypto creators, it's for any creator. There's no reason not to put your media on chain. You can pretty much just add this to your normal workflow of if you're a podcast, you're publishing to Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Now you're just publishing on chain to whatever platform, whether it is Pods or Zora or anything like that. So I think right now we're just very much in this grow the pie moment of all media that ends up on chain is a net good. And as long as we keep up on that trend and continue to bring more media on chain and showcase the value proposition for both the creators and the collectors of why they should engage with this stuff, I think we're going to be in a really good spot in the next 5 to 10 years.
Let's go. For any of you, especially for any of you who are doing your own podcast, right? If you haven't started put anything on pods, it's the time to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And if you're listening to this episode is available right now on Pods. You can mint it.
Try it out, man. Try it out. Thank you. And yeah, I'm really curious now about you. Right, like your questions, your stories. A question that I ask also to all my guests is share one of your stories along all these years in Web3 that you think is really epic. It's just epic, full of risk taking, It's silly. It's funny. It's for people to remember you, right? This is something that Lucas has done in the past.
Mm.
Probably something that only he can do, right? That made him who he is today. So I'm
I
gonna
love
leave the
that.
stage to you for that story.
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. I think I'll limit it within the scope of crypto because I think that's what people are most interested about. But outside of like the pods and bankless journey, I was also very fortunate enough to be like a founding partner at this organization called FireEyes, where we've helped do a lot of token and governance launches across the ecosystem. And I think one of my favorite stories is that we were ironically at Solana Breakpoint in 2021, helping or we were standing outside a club. So me and James and Callum and Cooper were all standing outside of a club at Solana Breakpoint, helping launch the ENS token. Sitting with our laptops outside of a club, launching a multi-billion-dollar
Dude,
airdrop. If you remember that airdrop, like we were pretty instrumental in
dude, it's
one the
crazy.
token
It's
launch and
one of the
and
biggest. One of the
yeah.
biggest.
So we were quarterbacking a lot of that token launch behind the scenes. Obviously, Brantley and Nick and that whole team did a majority of the legwork, but we had a fortunate enough position to kind of handhold them through that token launch process and get it through the line. So I think that was probably the most interesting part where, you had Kyle, Samani, and Raj and the founders of Solana in this club raging, and we're sitting outside launching, the Ethereum, the ENS token, which I think is probably stepping back outside of the token, the protocol itself is probably the most impactful protocol, I think, outside of like Bitcoin, Ethereum,
100%.
and yeah, that's where I would put it. So I think that was a very interesting story, and it was just a funny, ironic time to be launching a very core Ethereum protocol and token launch at a Solana event. So
Thank you for sharing that. I find that really interesting. That was back in what, like 2020 or 2021, somewhere around
November
that.
21, yeah, November 21. That
Oh
was like
yeah,
peak
yeah,
bull
yeah. I
market.
remember now.
Yeah, like peak. ETH was going to 4,500 or something crazy. But yeah.
Crazy shit. Okay, and like I remember in the earlier days, when I first decided to be a content creator, I come to you, right, ask for some advice. And I remember the one thing that you really shared with me that I find really inspiring is you said just to let the conversation flow, right?
Hmm.
Trust your guest. They know what they're talking about. Let the conversation flow. And I
Hmm.
really find that like really helpful, right? With all these episodes that I've been recording. And yeah, I want to save the last few minutes for you to actually just share some good advice, good experience that you learned along the way of these all these years building in the media side, right?
Hmm.
For people especially who are just starting, thinking about
Yeah.
starting the podcast or whatever the content they wanted to make, like short type videos and stuff like that. But yeah, please, I really think this will be helpful.
Yeah. I think no surprise here, but I think the biggest key to kind of growing within the media space is just consistency. So coming up with a content schedule and release and adhering to it and releasing on, a weekly, multiple times a week or whatever kind of cadence you decide. Um, I think it's some crazy stat like 90% of podcasts don't make it past 20 episodes. So if you can start just pushing through it and have that reason that you just want to be doing this, I think that's super helpful. And in terms of like the interviews and that whole process, I think Pod of Jake, who's on Pods, the founder, or the host, he's also the founder of Base Colors. He has just a really interesting thing of like he's not necessarily interviewing crypto people. He's just interviewing people that he finds interesting and wants to learn from. And I think that is like there's something really powerful about that. You kind of almost do this selfishly for yourself. The content creation is for you to learn, and I think that's how I got my start in crypto in 2018, 2019, covering DeFi. I was like, look, I was just getting paid to learn, right? I was just covering all of the projects that I thought were interesting and unique and new. And I thought that I was curious about. And I think that just natural curiosity will definitely help you create content that other people will find compelling and interesting because, you think it's interesting and you're creating content that you think yourself would be interesting. So yeah, I think consistency and then covering stuff that you find interesting, regardless of whether it's in the meta, I think is a good kind of goal or just framework for approaching this. And then, yeah, I think letting conversations flow specifically within podcasts is a great way to do it. I think most of the best podcasts that you have, there's like a general agenda that people use. But really at the end of the day, they're just kind of tapping into the conversation, trying to unpack certain specific things that person said that wasn't necessarily in the agenda. And that agenda is really just kind of like a reference point of, okay, this side of the conversation is dead. What else can we talk about? And using that kind of as the framework. So prioritize letting the conversation go and then using the agenda as like a backup or a fail safe when you kind of run out of things to talk about. Yeah, those would be some of my tips. Consistency, cover what you're curious about, and be natural about it. Don't try and force it.
I just wanted to share, like, for the learning side of things, I really find that's helpful. Like, for people who I invite to my podcast, I set a rule for myself, right? They have to be people who I genuinely curious about, want to learn from, right? And then that's why the conversation can be really interesting. And then that's also the tip, the key that keeps you continue to go, right? To break that 20 episode podcast, right? In addition to that, I think the second piece that you touched based on, right? The last piece. Wait, what is it about? The last part? I forget. I really think it's helpful.
Oh man, I already
Consistency.
Consistency, cover what you're curious about and be natural about it.
Let it go, let it flow. Yes. A lot of the conversations that we had today it's not in our agenda, right? Something is I listen to what Lucas says and what I really think is helpful or is interesting, right? I just dig deep so that the audience can be benefited as well. But yeah, bro, thank you so much for hopping on.
Of course, it was great to be here. Nice and quick and snappy episode. So hopefully people enjoy it. And shameless plug of mint this episode on Pods. Support Ricky, own the episode. Pods.media/Tales of Web3.
Yes, mint it. Support Ricky and support Lucas and his big ambitious dream that I believe will come into reality in the next 3 to 5 years. And thank you, everyone. That's the wrap for the second episode of the Tales of Web3 Season 2 with Lucas, the founder of Pods.
Thanks, Ricky.